In Ion, Jung discusses the Nashinis and the serpent Nash, which was their image of the divine substance in all creatures, comparable to the anthropos or to Sophia. The Nashinis themselves considered Nash, the serpent, to be their central deity, and they explained it as the moist substance in agreement with Thales of Miletus, who said water was the prime substance on which all life depended. Similarly, all living things depend on the Nash. It contains within itself, like the horn of the one-horned bull, the beauty of all things. It pervades everything, like the water that flows out of Eden and divides into 4 sources. The Gnostics equate the serpent Nash with the water of Garden of Eden rivers and with the original water that is at the root of all things. In a fuller version of this text, Hippolytus discusses the Nashinis who take that name because their deity is Nash, which means serpent. They do not worship any other object but Nash, and therefore they are called the Nashinis. But Nash is the serpent, from whom, that is from the word Nash, the Nashini says, are all that under heaven are denominated temples, that is naos. The Nashini states that to him alone, that is Nash, is dedicated every shrine and every initiatory rite and every mystery, and in general, that a religious ceremony could not be discovered under heaven in which a temple has no existence, and in the temple itself is Nash, from whom it has received its denomination of temple. Hence, according to Thales the philosopher, the Gnostics also equated the serpent Nash with the temple naos. Here is an idea remarkable for 2000 years ago, that there is an entity prior to all the separate religious denomination, the separate temples set up for different deities. There is a primordial stuff that is the essence of divinity, which inhabits all of those temples regardless of the particular deity that the temple is consecrated to. In other words, this is a truly psychological generalization, a symbolic announcement of the numinosum that lies behind all religious phenomena. Jung writes, for the Nashinis, the universal ground is the original man, Adam, and knowledge of him is regarded as the beginning of perfection and a bridge to knowledge of God. This is clear and corresponds to what we experience when dreams bring up images of the anthropos, the original man. They do indeed provide a bridge to the knowledge of the transpersonal. They do make a connection to wholeness. Jung further says, he, that is the original man, is both male and female, that is double, a union of opposites. From him come father and mother. He consists of 3 parts, the rational, the psychic, and the earthly. These 3 came down together into one man, Jesus. What lies behind the symbolism of the descent of the threefold entity is the fact that when the contents of the unconscious come into ego realization, they enter the realm of treeness. The symbolism of treeness belongs to the spatio-temporal world of ego existence, that is, space and time are ego categories. Although it is true that triads are incomplete quaternities, it is also true that when manifestations of original wholeness fall into egohood, that is, into space and time, they take on triadic characteristics, and we see that symbolism of the 3 here. Jung goes on. Hippolytus says that the Nashinis place the procreative nature of the whole in the procreative seed. This for them is the hidden and mystical logos, likened to the phallus of Osiris, and further synonym is the etephalic Hermes Kylenios, for they say Hermes is the logos. Hermes Kylenios refers to an etephalic statue of Hermes with an erect penis that existed in the temple of Hermes on Mount Kylene. That was the highest mountain in the Peloponnesus, and it was sacred to this god. The Gnostics equated this Hermes with the Logos. The sexual symbolism or the phallic imagery of the Hermes statue leads Jung to another text involving sexual imagery. It is related there that Christ took this Mary, not the Virgin Mary, with him onto a mountain, where he produced a woman from his side, and began to have intercourse with her. It says that Mary received such a shock that she fell to the ground. Christ then said to her, "Wherefore do you doubt me, O you of little faith?" This was meant as a reference to John 3:12. If I have told you earthly things and you do not believe, how can you believe if I tell you heavenly things? Jung then comments on this text. This symbolism may well have been based originally on some visionary experience, such as happens not uncommonly today during psychological treatment. For the medical psychologist, there is nothing very shocking about it. The context itself points the way to the right interpretation. The image expresses a psychologism that can hardly be formulated in rational terms and has therefore to make use of a concrete symbol, just as a dream must when a more or less abstract thought comes up during sleep. These shocking surprises, of which there is certainly no lack in dream, should always be taken as if, even though they clothe themselves in sensual imagery that does not stop at being offensive. They are unconcerned with offensiveness because they do not really mean it. It is as if they were stammering in their efforts to express the elusive meaning that grieves the dreamer's attention. This brings up the whole question of how one should understand overtly sexual imagery as it shows up in dreams. The great majority of cases, such dream images have nothing at all to do with concrete sexuality. Rather, they concern conjunctio or union symbolism. It is as though the unconscious, which generates dreams, is rooted in biological nature and therefore expresses ideation in terms of natural images. For example, this dream from a middle-aged woman with emerging creative powers as a poet and scholar. I see a young man, naked, glistening with sweat, who catches my attention first by his physical attitude. He stands out by the fact that he has an enormous phallus in the form of a third extended leg. The man is in agony with the burden of his erection. She then has intercourse with him and undergoes a reversal of orientation, a kind of revolution. This is an example of the threefoldness of a content of the unconscious entering consciousness. A three-legged man, the third leg being at the same time a great phallus. The point of the dream is not concrete sexuality. Sexual imagery is used to refer to something else, that is the connection to the creative unconscious.